It's been a big week in the governor's race, at least in terms of exposure. As early voting gets underway, the question is whether any of that airtime moved the needle for voters. San Jose Mayor Mahan has touted his record running the third largest city in California, but has struggled to surge in the polls. He's joining me now to talk about his plans for the state. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Joey.
Look, time is ticking. What do you have to do to win over undecided voters in the next couple of weeks?
Well, Joey, we're actually feeling great. We've seen our numbers shoot up in the last 2 weeks. We've gone from low single digits to now double digits, and we're heading in a great direction. I think the debates were just an incredible opportunity for me to introduce myself to Californians. And I think people are looking for change, not extremism on either end of the spectrum, but someone with a track record of delivering results in their daily lives, reducing homelessness, crime, making housing more affordable. I'm really proud of my record in San Jose, which is the third largest city in the state, right after San Diego, your beautiful city, which I've enjoyed spending a lot of time in during this campaign. And look, Californians across the state want pragmatic, problem-solving leadership in Sacramento. For too long, we've been asked to pay more without getting better outcomes. And as a chief executive in a big city, someone with that leadership experience, I know what it takes to reduce crime, reduce homelessness. We've led the state in becoming the safest big city in the country, reducing the number of people living outside by 1/3. We now have thousands of homes under construction. I want to take those kinds of results statewide.
If you could fix just one thing about California, what would it be?
Affordability. It has gotten too expensive for working and middle-class people to make it in this state. I grew up in a working-class community. We were paycheck to paycheck. I know what it's like to just fight every month to pay the rent, to pay a mortgage, and it's just gotten too hard. We need to remove all of the barriers that we have created to building the housing we need. We need common sense energy policies that provide some relief. I'm the only candidate who has called for suspending the gas tax to provide some immediate relief to families, and then restructuring it so that EV owners are paying their fair share and we bring down costs for the people who need the help the most.
You are a moderate. You have sort of pitched yourself as this paragon of pragmatism. But if you have to work with the supermajority, very progressive legislature, how do you actually get any of this done?
Well, just as I've done in San Jose, I work with a very progressive city council. And what I've done is work collaboratively, but demanded that we focus on the outcomes we're delivering in people's lives. And look, I think we all want a better life. What we have to do, though, is acknowledge when our policies aren't working in practice. And I've been willing to challenge the status quo. I stood with your DA Steffens, and fought for Prop 36, saying it's not acceptable and it's not compassionate to leave people out on our streets to die of overdose. When someone's suffering from a serious addiction or mental health affliction, we need to create safe indoor treatment options for them. And when they're available, we need to require that people come indoors. Your DA has used Prop 36 to get 1,000 people into treatment. 96% of people have chosen treatment over jail, and overdose deaths in San Diego County are down 25% year over year because we have new and better tools. That's what problem solving in the public realm looks like, being willing to acknowledge when our policies aren't working and challenge ourselves to do better.
What would you do differently than the current administration on homelessness?
Well, just as I've done in San Jose, I believe that we have to create dignified alternatives to our streets, basic shelter, treatment capacity, and when it's available, we have to require people come indoors for their good and the good of the broader community. We also need to invest in prevention. We have to slow the rate of people falling into homelessness so we can move everyone who's out there on our streets indoors into a safe, dignified alternative to the streets.
How do you fund that? Where does that money come from?
Well, actually, it's much more cost effective. So preventing homelessness costs about $10,000 a household. Getting someone into shelter costs about $25,000 per person per year. leaving someone out on our streets costs over $60,000 per person per year. And if they end up in the carceral system, in jail or prison, we spend over $100,000 per person per year. So it is more cost effective to prevent someone from becoming homeless with case management, short-term rental assistance, helping them get past a negative life event, get treatment or job training or whatever it is that they need in their lives, than allowing them to fall into a tent encampment and become chronically homeless. We have allowed this humanitarian crisis to grow and deepen for years on end. It's made all of us worse off. We've seen thousands of people die on our streets. It's completely unacceptable. And as governor, I'm going to hold every city and county accountable for building the shelter and treatment systems we need and require people come indoors. And in the long run, we're not only going to save lives, we're also going to save money.
What about if people don't want to go indoors?
Well, I don't think camping should be a choice. In a modern, complex society, if you're offering people dignified alternatives to the streets, appropriate interim housing placements. In San Jose, we've built 1,000 new interim housing placements, individual rooms with doors that lock just in the past year. And we're doing that more cost effectively than we used to. Cities across the state have been spending up to $1 million a door building brand new apartment buildings. That simply doesn't scale to meet the magnitude of this crisis. But by buying old motels and converting them, by working with our county to stand up new treatment centers, by putting out modular, small or tiny homes, we found that we can scale up alternatives to the streets and then require people come indoors. But camping can't be a choice.
Tech billionaires are largely bankrolling your campaign. Would you be beholden to their interests if elected?
Well, Joey, first of all, a lot of people are invested in this campaign. I want to be really clear about that. We have hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of donors across the state from every industry. But look, I'm the only candidate in this race who has actually regulated big tech. Being in the big city in the heart of Silicon Valley, I know how powerful these tools are. And they can be used to make government more efficient and effective. They can also be used to take away our privacy, to harm our children, to create massive job loss. So I'm very clear-eyed about how to navigate this new technological change that we're seeing. In fact, I led San Jose to create the first and most robust upskilling program for our workforce. We have 1,000 city workers going through an AI upskilling curriculum to get ahead of this change. We've put strict limitations on data collection. We don't collect facial recognition data. We don't share data with third parties. We never sell people's data. And in fact, when it comes to those license plate readers, we delete the data every 30 days. So I actually have the experience to know what it takes to regulate tech. And on data centers, we require, and I will do this statewide, that any new data centers pay the full cost of infrastructure upgrades, energy costs, that they use recycled water if it's available, and that we use their investment to upgrade our infrastructure, not pass costs on to average people. That's unacceptable. So make no mistake, I'm running against all of the special interests in Sacramento, including big tech.
When it comes to AI specifically, how would you mitigate any negative consequences when it comes to the environment or job loss?
Well, as I just said, I don't think we can prevent artificial intelligence and the changes we're seeing in the economy, but we can regulate it, manage it, shape it to make life better for people.
How?
We've in San Jose created upskilling courses. We've brought new tools and trainings into our libraries for our community. The way to get ahead of technological change is not to put your head in the sand. It's to invest in people. It's to invest in their training, their skills, their knowledge, give them access to tools, and help them use new tools to make their lives better and to be more productive in their work. So we're really trying to equip our community. California needs to be the most AI-ready state, but we also have to regulate these companies and these technologies. As I mentioned, if a large tech company wants to build a new data center, they can't shift those costs on to ordinary people, to ratepayers. They need to pay for the full cost. And if we do this right, we will leverage their investment to actually make energy cleaner and more affordable for everyone else. That's the kind of win-win that we have to legislate.
I would like to know if you would declare a state of emergency over the Tijuana sewage crisis.
The Tijuana sewage crisis, absolutely. I was one of the first candidates to go down to the border, meet with families there, the young people, the very courageous students who are organizing and demanding better from their government. I would declare a state of emergency and demand that the state of California and the federal government clean up this mess. Beaches have been shut down for far too long. It is heartbreaking for kids whose social lives, their recreation was going out and surfing on the beaches. They haven't been able to do that now for over 1,000 days. It's totally unacceptable. We have not seen the kind of bold action from our political leaders that this crisis demands, and it's unfair. You know, for far too long, places like Imperial Beach and all those little towns, like places like where I grew up, Watsonville, a little farming town on the Central Coast, have been really neglected or overlooked by Sacramento. The state is more than just San Francisco and Los Angeles. As much as I love those cities, we've got to serve everybody and make life better for everyone.
I spoke to an analyst who said that where Democrats go astray on the economy is promises of hypothetical money, down payment assistance, when most people are struggling to pay rent and buying a house is a pipe dream. So how would you put dollars back in people's pockets?
Well, I think it's a great point, and it's why I'm proud to be the only Democrat in this race who has called for a suspension of the gas tax and then long-term reform. You can't tell me that in a state with a budget that has grown 75% in the last 6 years, that's $350 billion in size, that we can't afford to pave our roads without burdening working families. The gas tax is the most regressive tax in California. EV owners don't pay it. It's become fundamentally unfair, and it's part of the reason we pay the highest gas prices in the country. That would immediately put real money back in the pockets of working families, rural families. People have to commute to work every day. So that's a simple thing we can do. Longer term, though, we need a new mindset in Sacramento. For years, we've made government bigger and bigger. We have one of the highest tax burdens in the country. We have the most regulation by far of any state in the country. And we've made our lives much more expensive as a result. We've got to make sure we're getting value for those dollars. We need to stop reflexively always making government bigger and fight to make it better. One of the ways to make it better is remove the barriers we've created to building housing. Housing is the #1 cost for most families.
I know you have a 15-point plan for housing. Do you really believe that, let's say, one term, 4 years as governor, people would be able to find cheaper, more accessible housing?
We can build a lot more housing. Joey, it's worth noting, California isn't building condos. Condos have been the most accessible form of home ownership for young people, working people, for generations. We don't build them anymore because of the level of litigation risk related to them. We've got to reform our laws and our regulations so that people want to build housing again at all income levels, want to build housing that's accessible to people. People should be able to buy a home. We have the lowest home ownership rates in the country. And I'm not going to tell you what the other candidates do, that we're going to massively expand all of these programs to make it easy for people to put down a down payment. They don't know how to pay for that. What we need to do is actually build more housing, build it more affordably, and give people more options. And over time, yes, that will mean that the cost of housing comes down at relative to people's incomes. People's incomes will catch up and they'll be able to afford housing again. We created this failure in California over many decades, and it's not going to get fixed overnight, but it's time that we start jumping on it now and starting and demanding better. We've waited way too long.
Will you feel at all responsible if Democrats do end up splitting the vote and 2 Republicans advance to the general?
Joey, we're not seeing that at all in our polling. We've been shooting up in the polls and are now, looks like we've just passed Katie Porter and we're about to pass Chad Bianco. And I think, you may have one Republican get through, but really to me, this is a race, in my view, to be the top Democrat, because that individual is likely to be the next governor. And I want our next governor to be someone who is focused on outcomes, who's willing to challenge the status quo, who's going to demand that Sacramento do better before we even think about asking you to pay more. I've got the track record in executive leadership to demonstrate that that's exactly what I would do as governor. Without raising taxes in the state's third largest city, and with a balanced budget.
How do you do that all without raising taxes, without those new revenue streams?
Well, because we need to use the answer, Joey, can't always be that we need more money. We've got plenty of money. California is an incredibly high tax state, second highest tax state in the country. In San Jose, I can tell you from experience, I'm in my 4th year as mayor. We did not raise taxes. We balanced the budget every year, and we led the state in reducing crime by over 20%. We reduced the number of people living outside by 1/3. We got thousands
by putting
of
them
homes
into
under
temporary
construction.
shelter?
No, we've built affordable housing, we've built tiny homes, we've built interim housing, transitional housing, safe parking sites. But the way that we've done it is we looked at how we were spending our existing money. San Jose has a budget of $6 billion. The state has a budget of $350 billion. If you think that every dollar that they're spending in Sacramento, all $350 billion, is having a positive impact, I think you're off base. And so what I want to do is audit all of our spending, and I will not fund failure. We have plenty of programs and policies that aren't working in practice. Just in our healthcare system, billions of dollars of fraud. 25 to 30% of all healthcare spending in California is administrative overhead. On housing, the private sector would build housing more affordably if we would reduce the regulatory burden and the very high fees and long permitting timelines. So this is really about improving our policies and using our dollars more effectively. The answer can't always be that we need another tax in order to solve a problem.
Those two budget numbers, obviously a staggering difference. You feel like you're ready to scale up?
Absolutely. I'm the only candidate in this race who has executive experience in both the private and the public sector, have managed large teams, large budgets, and delivered measurable results on the issues that matter most to Californians. I would actually flip it around and ask, who else in this race actually has a track record of challenging the status quo and delivering better outcomes with the existing revenues at their disposal? I think I'm the only candidate in this race who actually has a track record that's relevant for what we need our next governor to do.
All right, Mayor Mahan, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joey. Great to see you.